Hey everybody, today we're going to cover image prompting and really go into depth about how we can use the image prompt as well as our text prompts together with things like ControlNet in order to iterate towards concepts, create new ideas that merge the different elements from multiple images, and really push image prompting to its full potential. To start, let's play around with this car. Now, what I'm going to try to do is imbue this structure of the car with a material concept that might not be expected. So let's use this kind of ice sculpture that I've put together here. And to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use ControlNet, and I'll use my SDXL Canny ControlNet to pull out the structure of the car. It looks like the default processing for Canny picked up all the details that I want, so I won't mess with the thresholds. And then we'll go ahead and add our IP adapter. Now, the IP adapter I want to use here, I'm not going to want to use the plus adapter since I don't want the structure. I just want the concept. Both the IP adapter SDXL and SDXL VitH work pretty closely to one another. I tend towards using the second, primarily because it has more letters, and that is always super appealing to me. So we'll pull our ice in, and we'll bring the weight down to about 0.4. When I'm playing around with IP adapter, I have a mental model for how much I'm trying to bring in the concept. Anything from 0.3 to 0.45 is, in my head, just kind of influencing the final output, but is not driving it. So it's not going to overtake the text prompt. Anywhere around 0.6 to 0.7, it is having a major impact on the content, the subject. It's kind of driving the prompt. And if you get closer to 0.9, sometimes it feels like you might not even need a text prompt. It's really just kind of focusing on what's inside of the image. So I'm going to use 0.4 in this case, and I'm going to update this to a photo of a car. And we'll go ahead and leave this just to see if we've got enough in here for it to actually take the material out of this with just the image prompt. So this one probably is the closest to what we wanted. I'm going to bring down the end of our canny here a little bit, primarily because if you look at the details, it does look like there's a little bit of a pixelation, jagged edges, and that typically means the ControlNet is doing too good of a job and kind of causing this to artifact a little bit. So we'll give it a little bit more freedom on the end of the denoising process. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a second IP adapter. I'm going to use kind of the IP adapter plus, and I am going to throw in this car that we've already made. I will bring that down as well since we've got multiple things driving this towards a car shape. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's take away the ControlNet and let's just see what happens with driving the car, the ice, and our prompt up here. I think this will be interesting. So definitely getting some interesting concepts here, but not really what I'm looking for. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this concept of the ice. I'm going to take out Arctic scenery, and I'm going to do made of ice in the text prompt. I really just want to kind of like infuse all of the attention into the car. Okay, there are some interesting ones here. I like the like ice sculpture bumper. Some of these are looking pretty interesting, but we're losing kind of the cool sports car look that we had previously, which, you know, personally I wouldn't buy one of these cars. I think we need something a little bit more aerodynamic. But I may take this concept. I'll bring this down to a normal IP adapter instead of plus, and then I'm going to do a sports car made of ice, aerodynamic. We'll hopefully pick up some of that curve. Okay. Yeah, the entire car is now made of ice, so this became an ice sculpture. I'm going to take this, I'm going to bring our ice sculpture down, I'm going to bring our kind of ice car down as well. And for the sake of bringing in some of that kind of nicer vehicle, we'll pull in maybe this one. As well. And so it's going to kind of merge all three of these concepts together with our prompt. Okay, you got some cool ideas here. I think I like this one the best, and I think we got what we were looking for with this one. You can see a lot of the translucence in the outside of the car. It's definitely got kind of this icy vibe. I think we've done a good job kind of iterating towards this. There's a couple of details that I would probably finish up if I wanted to turn this into a final piece, you know, finishing up the lights on the front, making it not missing this headlight. But overall, I think the core concept has been fused together pretty well. So I'll delete all of the other cars and probably our ice statue as well, just to clean up our board. And we'll move on to another IP adapter exploration, where we'll try to turn this here into a more photorealistic, kind of like film still. So we've got this illustration of this kind of like mystical woman, and we are really trying to imbue the core concept into our final generation. Now, I will note that there are really two different ways of bringing the contents of this image into the final output. We can use IP adapter, which I like to use when I'm bringing in concepts or styles, and a style is really just a stylistic concept. So what is happening there is we're taking the contents of the image, passing it through a machine learning model that is looking at what is inside of the image. It's looking at subject, it's looking at style, it's looking at how it's composed. It's really trying to figure out all of these different dimensions of what is in the image to map that back to what it knows about. And then it's going to use what it knows about to kind of try to recreate that based on the weights that you've used. When we're doing image to image, however, we're using the raw pixel data of this image as our initial denoising content. What that means is we can dramatically change what it is interpreting this image to be using our text prompt and the denoising process itself. You can use these two together. So let's just play around and explore how these two differ. We'll start with just IP adapter. And we'll bring in this picture here into our IP adapter, and we'll bring this down to a 0.3. And what I'm going to do is change our prompt. And we'll see what happens when we take this concept here at a 0.3 and pass it through this image. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off our random seed. I'm going to do one iteration, and I'm going to do a few at different weights so that we can see how this concept manifests itself with this prompt at different weights of the IP adapter. So we'll do 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7. Now, as we compare these three, we can obviously see this one looks the most like a photograph or a film still. This one looks kind of closer to that original artistic style, but we've got an entirely different structure here while retaining some of the elements of this original image. Now let's see what happens when we do the exact same thing with the same seed using our initial image. And to keep the content close to what we've got here, we'll do a denoising strength of 0.5, which will give it some flexibility on producing more details, but we'll still retain a lot of the structure. So we'll do a 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7 weight. Now we can see, because we're using the pixel data from the original image, even at different levels of that IP adapter, it's not really changing a whole lot. because we've actually brought in a lot of the core content using the pixel data, and it didn't have as much flexibility here on the denoising strength to change what was in the original image. So what we can do to keep the structure the same, but bring in a little bit more variability in the details, is we can turn our denoising strength up pretty high, something like 0.85. We'll add a control net, and we'll use the control net to control the structure instead of the initial image. Effectively, what this is doing is skewing the color data while allowing us to maintain our structural information using the control net instead. And I am going to bring the threshold up just because I don't want as much of the detail that is pulling in. And I notice that I'm using the new image here, which has this kind of like ear strain thing. And so I'm going to go back to my original image structure. Okay, so we've got a couple of inputs here. We have our IP adapter, we have our control net, we have our initial image. I'm going to bring the control net down to about 0.75 so that it's got some freedom at the end structurally. But I'm just going to restate the purpose of each of these inputs so that you can really follow along with my thought process and what I'm using to control what. The initial image here is going to skew the color data. Now, we already saw that when I have a 0.5 denoising strength, it actually is bringing in a lot of the pixel data, the content, the overall image into that final output. And so I've brought my denoising strength up to 0.85. If I generated without a control net, however, I'd lose a lot of the structure. And so what I've done is I've imposed that structure using a canny control net. That will allow me to, even at higher denoising strengths, keep the core structure of the image. And lastly, I'm using the IP adapter here at various strengths to just demonstrate what happens when we use different weights. I'm pretty confident that we're going to need a low weight in order to get that film output that we're going for, but I'll use higher weights to emphasize the difference. So we'll do a generation with 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7. So our 0.3 is looking a little bit closer. It's obviously a lot different than the original image, but we still want to really pull out a little bit more of that realism. So what we're going to do is we're going to update our initial image and our IP adapter, and we're going to increase our denoising strength to 2.9. And I think we've kind of gotten the hang of how the weights impact things, and so I'm just going to keep this at a 0.3. Okay, while I'm seeing some additional lighting changes, it's still very, very illustrative to me. So what I may do is I may use this picture that we generated earlier that's a little bit more realistic as our IP adapter, and I'll go ahead and increase that up to 0.5. Now we're starting to get a little bit more of that really scary, mystic looking lady. So I'm going to use that as my initial image. And for the hell of it, I'll just bump this up to about 0.7. And we'll see what we get. Starting to turn that into hair, which I don't know that we really want. We do like this direction that it's going in. So maybe what we'll do now is we'll see what happens when we don't use an initial image and we're just kind of generating with our IP adapter and our control net. Really seems to have brought in a lot of this kind of the illustrative elements of this back into the image. And so I'm a little bit frustrated by that, but I think I've got to solve. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to get some more concepts of our mystic seer at a lower weight, trying to get a little bit more of just those more realistic concepts. So now I'm going to use these three images that I've just generated as my IP adapters. And we'll do them at a 0.45 or so. And we'll give this a shot with our control net on. And we'll go ahead and try one with our image to image as well. Now, just for fun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off our controls. I will pull down our denoising strength to about 0.7, and we'll just see what we get to. And then what we'll do is we'll just go into the unified canvas and touch up the face a little bit. We'll add our control net. We'll do a very loose, soft edge clip, this face area. And we're going to bring that step percentage really low because we want it to just control that early structure to avoid any major deviations from our image. But we're going to give it a lot of freedom here in fixing this one up. And maybe what we'll do is we'll turn off some of these IP adapters. I think they're kind of creating a little bit too much confusion in the image. And we'll do a close-up photo. And maybe just for some good old-fashioned denoising fixing, we'll do a low denoising pass on the entire image and keep kind of control of this. I may change that to canny though, because this is looking a little bit like it might have some problems otherwise. Cool. And I think that'll do it for us. We've kind of effectively transitioned this image and concept into a little bit more of a realistic image. We'll delete everything on the way here. And just compare kind of our original with our final. Now, I recognize some people might be disappointed that we kind of gained about 50 years in the process. It was not something I was trying to control for, mostly just trying to get the Mystic Seer vibe and a lot of the structural elements the same. But you can obviously control for whatever you want using the prompt and any inputs, like image prompt that you're using otherwise. Now let's take a look at pulling style through IP adapter. So we'll kind of use this image that I generated that has a very cool artistic style to it, and we'll have a good time trying to pull the style out of this. So we'll take this out, we'll bring the weight down to about 0.45 or maybe a little bit lower. We don't want it to be too low because we do want a lot of the artistic elements to come through, but we're going to focus primarily on the subject in the positive prompt, although I can throw maybe something like a painterly brushstroke in there as well. Image concept in here, we have our subject. It is going to fight our subject a little bit. It's going to try to pull in some of the contents of this. This is part of the process as you're iterating towards the concept that you're looking for. So we're going to kind of work our way towards this retro wave detective. All right, so we'll try to fight this with our negative prompt. We'll put a pretty strong negative helmet in here because we got our retro wave detective, but he's got a big helmet on. Maybe we'll even put sunglasses on our retro wave detective and see if we can try to push it away. All right, I am thinking that we got a pretty awesome result here. We've got like 3D sunglasses, which is awesome. Now that we've got something that we think is closer to what we want, we can actually use that as our image prompt. So now we can really iterate our way towards the concept of our kind of sunglasses retro wave detective. Now, the challenge in doing this is we've kind of strayed a lot from the art style of our original in moving in this direction. What we can try to do is account for that by bringing in our older image here as an image prompt. And I'm actually going to try to upweight it a little bit because we've got two influences here towards our retro wave detective. We've got this one and our text prompt up here. So I'm going to try to balance that out by bringing this up to about 0.5, but we'll see how this works for us. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to bring that one in, and we'll bring that up a little bit. Oh, and I'm loving this direction. Let's keep going. Okay, this looks dope. I really like this. So now what we can do is we could take this as our image prompt if we want to get some variations just to toy around with stuff. We'll put IP adapter plus, put this at 0.65, and this is going to kind of really just hone in on this concept. One or two more just to see if we find a favorite. I actually think I'll just stick with this one because it looks pretty good. We'll maybe fix up a couple of elements close up, but overall I think this is closer to what I was hoping for. So we'll take our gent to the unified canvas and we'll zoom in. And we are going to want to make sure that this is not plus, but one of just the more conceptual IP adapters. And focus in on the head. We'll add a control net just to give us a little bit more control in the early part of the generation. And we'll increase our denoising strength up to about 0.75. Now, I'm not sure exactly where the pink highlight would come from in this image, but frankly, I don't care because it looks cool. Overall, I think we've achieved our goal here. Obviously, I think there are some more style differences, especially in this kind of final output that we have. This looks a little bit more plasticky and soft, whereas our original image was definitely kind of like a rougher, grittier look. But we carried some of that through into this image. And if we really wanted to, we could try getting some of that back an image to image. So let's save that to the gallery and let's just give that a go to see what we get from that. Give that a go. Now, in our iterations here, I just kind of sped through that because I was kind of fiddling with a lot of settings and just having a little bit of fun. What I did was infused a lot more of our original image here into the final output, trying to get a little bit more of that gritty style, which I think we achieved. It definitely looks a little bit less kind of Grand Theft Auto than that original one. And I actually like the way that it has styled itself now in this final output. I think we've kind of achieved a nice look here that definitely has that kind of like Outland scavenger vibe. Obviously, like retro wave detective probably would fit more along the lines with this guy. It's like pinks and teals, and you know, this is obviously our like best retro wave detective. But I think we've succeeded in infusing some of this style and some of the concepts here into this final output. As you can see, having watched me play around with it, this is an art, not a science. You can't predict what's going to come out exactly on the other side, but using creative inspiration and iterating and nudging the concept a little bit closer each time to what you're going for, using the tools that you have at your disposal, whether it's the image prompt for the concept, whether it's the text prompt to really pull out those terms that you want to see in the output, or using image to image or the canvas to really make sure that you've got the color information being passed in. You have control net at your disposal to control structure. All of these things come together to help you iterate and fine tune towards that ultimate goal that you're creating towards. Now, we didn't dive into it on this video, but obviously if you are using the IP adapter in your workflows, you have a lot of tools at your disposal in building out a pipeline that takes concepts and iterates on those automatically. If you've watched some of the other workflow videos and you've watched this, you should understand how the IP adapter is working, and you should be able to wire it up into your denoise latence node in order to control a lot of the concepts that are going into it. Really looking forward to seeing what you all create. Remember, like, subscribe, share Invoke with your friends, your family, and remember to join the Discord to hear the latest on any announcements and contests going on. We'll see you soon.